It's OTA day for Marvel's Snap or over the air updates, which means card changes and balance updates. Let's dig into the details, starting with a much needed Hell Cow nerf. Hell Cow is going to a 4/7 that now only discards a singular card with its activate. Second Hitter acknowledges that their goal with this change was making Hellcow playable, and they certainly did that. They took it from being one of the most unplayed pieces of trash in the game to a premier piece in one of the most popular combo decks in the game. But they go on to say that even after the novelty of Hela coming back wore off, her play rate has persisted at a rate that they don't care for, so they're trying to tap her down a little bit with this change. The biggest change in my mind that this Hell Cow change results in is that the do nothing till turn 4 Hela draws will now be a lot less powerful. If you're simply Hell Cow, discard one other thing, and Hela on 4, 5, 6. You're only going to get a total of 2 cards as opposed to 3. It also means that discarding those high cost things is going to be more important. Previously, if you discarded a Luke Cage or a Blink that didn't do anything, it wasn't that big of a deal, and now getting absolutely every point possible out of your Hela will be key. I'll be curious to see what this does to the power level and more specifically the popularity of Hela as a deck. At the very least, this change should deal a bit of psychological damage that will hopefully make this annoying casino archetype less popular. Our next change is coming to a key card in the Clog archetype, White Widow. Specifically, the Widow's Kiss will now be a 0/4 card that says destroy this when your side of the location is full. Second Hitter notes that they've learned a lot about the Clog archetype in the last year. For a long time, it really struggled to be competitive, and with the addition of White Widow and other tools, i.e. Kate Bishop's Acid Arrow, it's really started overperforming and been a consistent and powerful metagame force. One of their goals moving forward when they design new cards for this Clog archetype is that they're going to have out clauses to things that are cluttering up your opponent's side, such as filling your location. You get to get rid of the clutter. Second Hitter goes on to say that they note that this could be a big detriment to White Widow's power. I think it is, and they're right, and they're going to monitor it if they need to put points back into her kit in the future to make up for it. I wouldn't be surprised if White Widow ends up being a 2/3 as a result of this change. They also note that it is particularly interesting that White Widow can be a synergy card now as well, though, because specifically, if you get rid of the text on the Widow's Kiss with Red Guardian, it's actually something of a combo, resulting in you getting 2, 3, and 6 or 11 points of power out of your 2/3 drop. I think this is a great change. I think Clog's a pretty frustrating archetype, and White Widow has been omnipresent as one of the best 2 energy cards in the game, and I think this seems like a solid adjustment, and I like the fact that she can be a build-around card with Red Guardian for a lot of points, a card that she had previously had kind of anti-synergy with. I also like that Second Dinner is outlining a design philosophy change they're going to be approaching Clog with in the future, because I would agree having more organic counterplay to these clutter cards is important to not letting them make the game feel very frustrating for players. Our next change is another nerf to the Clog archetype. Viper is going from a 3/5 down to a 3/4. I am not remotely surprised to see this change happen, and I think it's a good one. Specifically, I don't think a single deck that's currently playing Viper stops playing her because she lost a singular point of power, which means it's a relatively free point to take away. I think Viper's text box when she got her update to always hitting the lowest card on your side was an incredible power boost, and 3/5 and even this new 3/4 Viper are the strongest this card has ever been compared to her old 2/3 iteration that worked at random. Up next, we have a redesign to Zabu that I really like. The cat will now be a 1/2 with the on reveal, give each 4 cost card in your deck -1 cost. Second Inner kicks off by noting they've been promising an update to Zabu for a while. They knew when they were originally making the cat on reveal for the next turn, it was an over nerf. They explored making the card activate in their internal playtesting, but they felt like it was a hard line between making the card too strong as a 1 cost with activate and not being strong enough at other costs with a similar effect. They also go on to say that making Zabu a 1 energy card means it can have synergy with Khazar, which is a character thematically it's related to. I like the design that they ended up at. It's going to give it a little bit of a variance element, your opponent not knowing which 4 energy cards that you've drawn, and when you play it out early, you also won't know exactly how big of an impact it's going to be until the end of the game. This seems like it's almost assuredly an upgrade to the existing 2-3 on reveal effect we've previously had. Up next, we have a change to 2 cards and a location. Specifically, Kingpin, Scream, and Fisk Tower will now no longer impact face-down cards. They are doing this for consistency's sake. They want things that impact face-down cards to be as clear about when they're going to do that whenever possible, such as Juggernaut explicitly calling it out, which is also the card that this change is largely being made for, to make up for the fact that Scream is obviously being made worse by this change in a niche interaction. They're also giving it a base point of power, making it a 2-3 as opposed to the 2-2 it released at. Overall, this change seems fine. It was a niche interaction anyways. Scream's getting an extra point of power out of it, and Kingpin probably continues to be bad like he's always been anyways. Finally, we wrap up on a couple of stat line boosts that I think are probably mostly irrelevant, but they are free points that they can add into the game, so they're certainly not going to make these underplayed cards any worse. Specifically, Grandmaster is going from a 2-2 up to a 2-3, which I think is the most interesting of these. This is a pretty close to on-rate stat line for an effect that can be powerful in the right spots, but is situationally awkward with how you have to have your center location open and play a card from the side. It is worth noting that Clog's going to be getting a bit worse with the White Widow and Viper changes, so perhaps that archetype becoming less popular along with Grandmaster getting a point means it could be useful. Our next buff is Okoye is going from a 2-2 up to a 2-3 with simply the note she's been struggling and she's a neat card, so they want to add points back into her kit. Finally, Emperor Hulkling is going from a 6-11 up to a 6-12. I would be shocked if this card is anything above garbage tier still, even with this change. There's just so many 6 energy cards that Hulkling can copy that effectively make it terrible, and even when it does get a 6 energy card that ends up being good, such as Goliath, that's only marginally better, and the absolute most insane high rolls where you get something like a Arnim Zola or a Null Against Destroy or even a Doctor Doom are so few and far between, they rarely make up for the amount of raw bricks that you're getting on the in-between. Overall, this feels like a solid B, maybe B plus over the air update. They hopefully tap down the Hela problem with the Hell Cow change, and I think the couple of adjustments to Clog are definitely warranted and welcome. The Zabu buff probably puts that card at least in a niche position back onto the map, and our recently released Scream card got a little bit of a buff as well. As always, I'd love to hear in the comments down below what you're interested in brewing with, or if you think this is going to have a reasonable impact to the metagame as a whole. Outside of Hela, I do kind of groan at thinking that Erishim is still going to be an incredible amount of my games. In fact, playing Marvel Snap over the last few days on stream, I've actually anecdotally had way more Erishim than anything else, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a rise in that, but I also hope that I'm really wrong about it. If you enjoyed my breakdown on the topic, do all the YouTube stuff, and be sure to check in again on Saturday when we'll be reviewing our best decks roundup after the results of this OTA have a little bit of data behind them.